I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I live today, the Gubbi Gubbi, Kabi Kabi people, and the Jinnabara people, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging.
Hi, I'm Denise, and I'm coming back into the new year, starting a little slower this year. And so I've got a little bit of footage left over from winding up at the end of last year. There's a little bit of a new art supplies, kind of an art haul. I've never done one of those before, but yeah, some new art supplies, and then I test them out in the sketchbook, and a little chat about some things that we did just before Christmas, and then winding down on a journal page. So this video is probably, it was sort of for when you haven't got much energy for making new art. I guess these were sort of more quieter exercises that I did with myself to just be able to be in the studio or be with some art materials, and there was no pressure to be making any final products or anything like that. So as I re-watched some of the things this year and this week as I've been editing, I noticed just how funky my process was. You know, when people do colour swatching, some people do all those little neat squares in a row and write the recipe of how much white was added and how they made the colour, or they make just cards that you can refer back to later. I just splashed it all on one page. So it's not it's not the most organised way of doing it, but again, when you have low energy and you just want to do something little, that's what happened, and that's what worked this time. Happy New Year. As I'm making this, it's sort of early January. We're into the second week of January, and I'm looking forward to bringing more vlogs this year. And yeah, some different ideas are popping in, so I'll just see how I go. The energy is different, and I feel that I'm really just having to go gently. And I had to remember that this was meant to be a space of grace for you and me. So having to remember that, take my own medicine of not putting pressure on myself to be anything I'm not. So that's where this one is today, and yeah, thanks so much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next time. See ya.
So here is some deliveries that came last week. I've been really sick, and I've left these waiting at the bottom of the stairs for days because I really wanted to do a little unboxing and share the stories and things behind the things that are arriving. And so what I'm going to do is video this part because I really want to play with some of the inks that are in the big box, and then I might do some samples and colour mixing and things like that another day when I've got my energy back. I actually got quite a bunch of neutrals and coloured gessos carbon black. I still like having a full black available. And I'm trying a bunch of whites and neutrals and lights that will just be good basics and things. So they're not terribly exciting colors, but I'm just sort of, they're interesting to make some more neutrals. Brilliant alizarin. I haven't tried that, I don't think. It's kind of the closest I think that we get in Australia to golden fluid. Yeah, and they're much more affordable for us here, the Matisse. Now this is what I want to play with today, is some inks. It's a burnt umber, and these really big bottles, so it's going to allow me to sort of be a bit more generous and splashed around a bit, you know. Oh, more just black, carbon black. So quite a lot of just neutrals arriving today, really. A new postcard to send when I send off parcels. So that's pretty exciting. Gertrude. And a new business card to go with it. I like doing these the square ones, and it's like a little mini picture. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's awesome. I did something different with the back this time. It's kind of quite busy, but it's got all the information that we need. So I've got a gathering of mostly my recent new purchases. A few I already had, but off-white caramello coloured gessos, and these two coloured gessos, folk black and antique green, I just kind of splashed out because in that bloody Black Friday sale everyone had sales on, so I thought, all right, I'll get some art materials. So, and then I got ivory black, and I think I got carbon black. I don't know, I went kind of crazy, but on a lot of neutrals. And I've really been wanting to try this off-white and antique white and just see what's going on with these, because sometimes you want to just mix a warm white, which is easy enough to do, but to have one on hand I thought might be handy. Also, these big bottles of ink, I got a new black and a new white because they were not very expensive, and I thought you can be really generous with them when they come in such a big bottle, which is quite nice. And the phthalo green, which is a little crazy, I've seen people using burnt umber, or I'm hoping it's burnt umber and not raw umber. I might have made a mistake and got, this is burnt, so I think raw is what I probably need, so I might have stuffed up there. And then I've got some brilliant alizarin to just try this with the green to temper it down a bit and find some new colors. And I've also been enjoying lots of Sandy Hester videos and seeing her mix up a bunch of greens, and I've seen people use ivory black with yellow and they get greens, which is interesting. So I've been out of action for almost a month, probably a month or more. All of December I got really sick, so I'm finding it hard to come back in to the studio. One, because it's still a mess, and I haven't got the energy to clean it up. So I've just sort of picked a bunch of stuff off the floor today, and that's made a little difference. And I thought I'll just clear a space and just play with some color swatching, which is not something I normally would do readily, but I've been noticing, again, YouTube, thank you YouTube, and Sandy, she does it a lot. She does a whole lot of color swatching, so she knows what she's got. So that's what this one's going to be about, I reckon. And then I also got this little groovy thing to try and make line work. It's a funny little gadget. It's sort of, I won't know till I try it, but it's supposed to be really good for using with masking fluid and also maybe with ink, and so you can do some fine line work. So that's something to try. And yeah, oh, and also, as per Sandy, she raves about these sketchbooks. So I went on Amazon and ordered myself this one and another square one, which hasn't come yet, to try out and to start having more sketchbooks spread around the place. It's got the creamy pages, to try and coax myself into playing more, because that's what I've noticed that Sandy does so beautifully. She just plays and plays and plays in her sketchbooks, and it's funny because she calls them sketches and they look like paintings. So that fascinates me, and so that's what I'm trying to do today, is to gently bring myself back into the sketchbook, because I haven't been well enough to practice at all for over a month. So here we go. So this is the session where I decided to try out these new paints, and I did the whole colour swatching thing in probably the most disorganised and messy way that you could imagine. I think probably I just didn't give it much thought. I thought, I'm just going to do this, slapdash, doesn't matter. And it was in an older sketchbook, so I'm not being precious, and just seeing how the paints feel. And so the first one that I put down was heavy body, so it was a bit thicker, and then that folk black is a coloured gesso, and that was quite more thin. So that was sort of the only difference there. That first one's ivory black from memory. Now I've tried to sort of show the containers as I'm going so that you can see the colours I've used, but I can see a little bit later on when I'm mixing some of these yellows with the blacks, I may have gotten a little confused, and instead of only the warm yellow with the black and see what happened, or the cool and see what happened, I may have double dipped into cool and warm. This was not scientific at all. It was just me trying to bridge the gap between not being in the studio for so long and just really craving to be able to make something, do something. So, and it was really interesting to see these greens appearing with the
the faux black, is it? Yeah, that was the faux black. And then I tried it with the ivory black just to see how they make these greens. It's quite a khaki, olivey kind of deep green there. So that's with the cool yellow, but see how I think I got confused and did both with the cool. So sorry about that. This is not one that you would watch to learn the specifics of colour mixing, but more what to do when you're desperate to bring yourself to your sketchbook. You can do something as messy as this if it helps. So there is me mixing with so that's the cool yellow, and then I'm trying to find a clean finger with the warm yellow and the ivory black, and as you can see it does make quite a green, yellowy greens, but greens all the same. So yeah, I've seen people do that. I think I've seen Betty Franks do that on her videos, and I've never tried it, so that was good to you know, the curiosity. It feels different when you try it yourself. Yeah. Now I'm just putting some white ink just so it was easier than getting out paint, and I wanted to see, that's a really good way of seeing what does a colour do when you put white with it. That's what's happening here, just to see the very light version of that mixture, and it gives some sort of nice paler shades. And your finger is a better mixing tool than a knife sometimes. So yeah, they're quite a yellow green there with the ivory black. You wouldn't think so, would you? Yeah. So they'll be interesting to remember that the ivory black can really bring a bit of green tinge to things. I don't think I realised that. Obviously mixing with the yellow brings it more, but yeah, it's not a neutral, like carbon black is probably a bit more like this faux black, you know, just probably almost cool, whereas the ivory black, you might say, is a little more warm. I'm not sure, maybe. Yeah, good to remember to label, because in a matter of hours, if not days, I would have forgotten what did I use. And that is the antique green, another coloured gesso. So I'm just testing that out to see what's it like with these yellows as well, to give some more different greens. See, there's on my palette knife there would have been the cool, so I'm remembering to use the warm over there. Yeah, so they're more different again. Yeah. As I'm doing this voiceover later, yeah, there's moments where I'm thinking, I don't know what else to say about this really. So there could be a few little pauses in this section. Yeah, I feel quite rusty, you know, after just a month break of not making video. It's interesting to feel like I'm starting over again in a way, and to sort of try and be patient with myself about that. Oh, this gum leaf green is quite nice. It's surprising how it dries quite a bit darker. You know, then it's on a whitish page here, and it's quite a lot darker than you imagine it to be when you just look at it in the jar. Yeah, so I've been using that a little bit on my small boards with the ladies for this sort of greeny tinged kind of neutral. I think what I mean by neutral in a way is not loud and bright, more toned down, so they're a bit of a contrast to the strong colours. It's nice to have some quieter, lighter ones. So I do want to understand a bit more about how to get some real light colours, and if you like warm greys and things that will play up against the brights, because if you have in a painting all brights, that it's not as interesting as having diversity of some not so bright will make the brights feel or look even brighter. Okay, so this is the off-white and the antique white. So the off-white was really quite yellowy, creamy, you know, like a old-fashioned clotted cream, the colour it used to be. I don't think it is much anymore. I don't know what happened to that, but yeah, very yellowy, that off-white, and it's called warm white, and you wouldn't consider it a white at all when you see it down there. So that was interesting. And the antique white feels like it's almost nothing, but it's a little bit of a warm white, the antique one. So that's that here on my right. And also that looks cream. I guess you might say, and the other one's more buttery yellow. So yeah, they're a lot different to having titanium white. So I'll be interested to see how I might use them and mix them. What I found a little bit later in this colour exercise was mixing those with the alizarin crimson gives some nice warm pinks, which I particularly like, warm pink as opposed to cool. So that's nice to find that using those, and just playing with those inks to see what is it like. Can I draw with the glass dropper? Can you draw with that? Because with the De La Rowney little bottles, I notice you can draw with them quite lovely. And yeah, what I'm noticing with this ink is I don't love it as much as the De La Rowney, especially some of her blues that I use. And then when you add water, they're just divine. They're gorgeous. And so maybe that's because I've not ordered sort of exciting colours, except for the phthalo green, which is quite exciting. It's got a beautiful depth of colour. It's gorgeous. So there I'm mixing a little bit of white with that carbon black, and it gives you a very cool grey. So that's good to know, good to be reminded. And the burnt umber ink is what I'm mixing over there, and it's kind of dirty. I realise I think I'm after the raw umber for a mixing thing, not burnt. So I think I did make a mistake there, I think. And that caramel, that's not something I would normally go for at all. But next to bright, say bright magenta, pink and things like that, it'll almost maybe come out as a bit of a neutral. Oh, I don't know, I think I could be misusing the word neutral, but as a contrast, as a different, you know, like a tone down, like I was saying before, not bright, but it's got more white added. So yeah, I'll be curious, you know, I'll have to push myself to use some of these new colours, because you get sometimes in a bit of a colour habit, a colour groove that you are in. So that's another reason why it's fun to sometimes buy a few new colours to see what new direction they may take you in. So that's pretty nice. So here I am going to try the phthalo green, mix it with that brilliant alizarin and see what happens. Because on its own, as much as I kind of love it, it sort of can be a bit hard to match it to things, or for it to, it's kind of a little bit too strong and a bit cool or something. Something goes on with it that it doesn't always work. It might work actually nice as a glaze. Sometimes you could use it watered down as a bit of a glaze to give a depth of green. And that's it mixed with that deep section in the middle there is mixed with the red, and then I've put a bit of white. And then I think I'm taking some of that pink somewhere to try it with those warm whites and the off-white. And so that's quite delicious, that brilliant alizarin. That's it with a bit of white, so it gives you a nice pink. Quite like that. And I will be moving the paper shortly. And that's, yeah, not a very good look at the pinks. Maybe I'll be able to I think I do a closer look in a moment. There we go. So that's just some really messy ways of doing some color swatches on a page when you haven't got much energy but you want to do something. And yeah, remember to label it so you'll know what you did. This is a tiny bit that I've done in my sketchbook while I wasn't well, and it felt so good to just put something down. And then my daughter Alex came home for Christmas, and she and I decorated a tablecloth. She bought a white tablecloth and she had all these ideas that she wanted these pictures on it. So we got red paint, yellow paint and blue, and just hand painted all these images on. I can put a photo in. And for Christmas, Alex gave me two more chairs, two more little chairs that she's made out of clay. They're just so adorable. So I was thinking, as the year is winding down, I believe it's the 28th today, 28th of December, I thought I just might do a spread of drawing quietly here with my black pen and sort of document some things in the last couple of days. There's a couple of quotes that I've heard that were quite meaningful to me, and so I thought I would just sit here quietly and do this in these quiet in-between days. I had noticed a post on Instagram by Louis Rosignol. He's an artist, does wonderful drawings, and this post stuck out to me. One, because I
I love the heron, and I believe he had a heron on the page that I was looking at. And his comment on his Instagram was, "One thing I've learned over the years as a freelance artist who doesn't do a lot of freelance work, creating art that is not pre-funded or financed and hoping it will find a market is equal parts exciting, exhausting, and scary." And I could just so relate to his words with just the whole feeling that I've been having around selling art and how to sell art and when it isn't selling, and just all of the meaning that we give that experience as artists. And so, yeah, I was just really struck by the way he said that it's equal parts exciting, exhausting, and scary. It was sort of a bit sad, and I guess, you know, having had that month of feeling quite low and unwell and not joining in the Black Friday marketing or the Christmas marketing for that matter. And, you know, I have an inner struggle every year around that anyway. I think it just doesn't resonate with the idea. It just, to me, feels like it's putting more pressure on people when they're already overwhelmed. And so as much as I love to share my art and to be able to sell my art is wonderful, the marketing machine that has become around the holidays is quite confronting to me. And I never quite know what to do, how to manage it, because, yeah, it doesn't resonate with me to bombard people. So, yeah, that is one of the reasons why this comment made by Lewis really struck a chord with me. So I thought I would give it a home on my page. It's quite lovely to have a place to bring these things, and you might revisit them. And hearing from other artists with comments that resonate is helpful along the way, I find. This quote is something I heard Lee Harris speaking about, and it was about releasing self-judgment towards oneself, towards ourselves. You know, we'd be really hard and self-judge ourselves, and it's quite a kind of epidemic in humanity's energy template. So the mind can use words as a weapon as much as it does to love. And I was really struck by that, so that's what I was writing up in the top corner there. And then I wanted to draw the little chairs that Alex had made. I was very delighted by them. And then this picture was Alex in her bedroom, at home in her room. She was here for about a week, and I walked past and saw her just reading in her bed with all her things all around, and it just filled me with such joy. We've only got 2 girls, and only one was able to come home for Christmas, and so having Alex home just really filled my heart. And yeah, so seeing her sitting there like that, I thought, oh my God, I'd love to draw that. And so I just cheated or used technology to help me. You can look at it either way. And I took a photo and then just put it in Procreate and just put the brightness down. What is it? You fade the image a little bit, and then I just used my Apple Pen and just roughly sketched around, which is the kind of sketch that I like doing anyway. But this just made it so much easier and quicker, and so I just roughly drew over the photo of Alex sitting in her room. And I really loved how it turned out, so I glued that onto the page. And there's a little note, a nod to Star Trek. Philip had been binge watching his Star Trek. That takes him to his happy place. And there's a very funny little picture of us 3, and we were FaceTiming with Kayla, our other daughter. So that was great to catch up with her on Christmas, and the little plate with the pav. So that was all I got to on that day with the sketching. But
It's really nice to even look back on it now. I can remember the feeling of looking in the door and seeing Alex. Oh, I wanted to mention the tablecloth that I hand painted with my daughter Alex. You might love it. And so I'll link to her Instagram and her website if you want to see more of her funky ceramics and things that she's making. You might enjoy them. They're very colourful. And yeah, so thanks for watching. Bye.